The valley was quiet in a way that felt intentional, as if silence itself had chosen to live there. It stretched wide and open beneath a soft evening sky, holding the last traces of daylight in gentle layers of blue and gray. The air was cool, unhurried, and clean, carrying the faint scent of grass and distant stone. A man entered the valley as night slowly began to settle. He did not hurry. There was no reason to. His footsteps were steady and calm, barely disturbing the earth beneath him. Each step seemed to belong there, as though the ground had been waiting for him all along. The valley welcomed him without sound. Low hills rested on either side, their outlines smooth and patient. They had been shaped by time, wind, and rain, and now they simply remained, silent witnesses to countless nights like this one. No lights were visible anywhere. No roads, no buildings, no signs of the world beyond the gentle slopes and the open sky. Above him, the clouds moved slowly, like thoughts drifting across a tired mind. The sun had already disappeared, leaving behind a fading warmth that lingered just enough to feel comforting. Shadows lengthened, blending softly into one another, until the land seemed wrapped in a single, continuous breath. The man paused near the center of the valley. He stood still, listening. There was almost nothing to hear, no voices. No distant machines. Only the subtle sounds that often go unnoticed, the faint whisper of grass responding to the breeze, the quiet shift of air as temperature changed, the distant call of something unseen and unbothered by his presence. This kind of quiet did Noti was not empty. It was full, complete, and calm. He set his bag down gently, careful not to let it fall too loudly. The ground accepted it without protest. The valley seemed to prefer slow movements, soft actions, and patience. And so he matched its rhythm. As the sky deepened, the first stars appeared. Not all at once, but gradually, one here, another there, until the darkness felt less like an absence and more like a shelter. The stars did not shine sharply. Their light was mild, distant, and reassuring. The man sat, resting his hands loosely in his lap. There was nothing he needed to do, nothing he needed to remember, nothing he needed to prepare for beyond the passing of the night. The valley did not ask questions. It did not demand explanations. It simply existed, steady and unchanged, offering its silence freely. A gentle wind moved through the tall grass, creating a slow, wave-like motion across the land. It was unhurried, repeating itself without urgency. The sound it made was barely audible, like a whisper meant only for those who had stopped listening for anything else. Time felt different here. Minutes did not rush forward. Moments did not compete for attention. Everything unfolded at its own pace. The man remained still as darkness settled fully into the valley. The hills became deeper shadows, the sky richer and more expansive. The air cooled slightly, wrapping around him like a light blanket. Somewhere in the distance, a night creature stirred, then grew quiet again. Nothing followed. Nothing needed to. This was a place where the night was allowed to be what it was, slow, deep, and undisturbed. As the man breathed in, the valley seemed to breathe with him. As he breathed out, the land remained calm, and so the night began, not with an event, not with a sound, but with a shared stillness between a man and a valley that barely spoke at all. Night settled deeper into the valley, not suddenly, but with the patience of something that knew it had all the time it needed. Darkness moved slowly across the open land, filling every low place, resting gently against the hills, and softening the edges of everything it touched. the air grew still, it was not heavy in an uncomfortable way. Instead, it carried a quiet weight, like a thick blanket laid carefully across the world. The kind of weight that asked nothing, pressed nothing, and simply reminded everything beneath it to slow down. The man remained seated, his presence small and unobtrusive. He had chosen a place where the grass was short and the ground even, as though the valley itself had guided him there. He did not shift or fidget. There was no need to adjust. The air held him exactly as he was. Breathing became easier to notice, each inhale drew in coolness, clean and faintly earthy. Each exhale released warmth, which faded quickly into the surrounding night. The rhythm was slow, natural, unforced. The valley accepted every breath without response, as if it understood that breathing was simply part of being here. Above, the sky had deepened into a rich, endless dark. The stars were clearer now, scattered across the vastness like quiet reminders of distance and time. They did not flicker or demand attention. They simply remained, steady and far away. The man looked upward, though his gaze did not linger on any single point. There was comfort in not focusing, in letting the eyes rest wherever they chose. The sky did not change when he looked at it. It did not expect admiration. A faint breeze passed through the valley, lighter than before. It moved around him rather than against him, slipping gently across the land, barely touching his skin. When it passed, the stillness returned, complete and uninterrupted. Silence followed, not the sharp silence of waiting, but the wide silence of completion. The kind that felt finished, whole, and satisfied with itself. Sounds were allowed here, but they arrived rarely and left without explanation. Somewhere nearby, grass shifted slightly under its own weight. Somewhere farther away, a stone cooled as the warmth of day fully released it. These were not events so much as quiet adjustments, small, natural changes happening without urgency. The man rested his hands on the ground beside him. The earth felt cool and firm, steady beneath his fingertips. It did not move or react. It simply existed, dependable and unchanged. Time continued to loosen its hold. There was no clear sense of how long he had been sitting there. Minutes stretched, softened, and drifted into one another. The night did not measure itself. It did not count or keep track. The valley seemed to exist outside of schedules. The weight of the still air pressed gently downward, not as pressure, but as reassurance. Nothing was about to happen. Nothing needed to be prepared for. The night was not building toward anything. It was already complete. The man allowed his shoulders to relax further, sinking just slightly as the ground supported him. The valley gave no sign of noticing. It did not reward relaxation, nor did it resist it. It simply remained unchanged, allowing him to settle as deeply as he wished. A distant sound appeared, soft and brief. Perhaps a bird shifting in its sleep. Perhaps the echo of something far beyond the hills. It faded quickly, leaving no trace behind. Silence returned, unchanged. The sky felt wider now, as if it had gently expanded. The stars seemed farther apart. Their light softer, less defined. Darkness filled the spaces between them, smooth and uninterrupted. The man's breathing slowed almost imperceptibly. There was no effort involved. The night itself seemed to guide the pace, stretching each breath slightly longer than the last. The valley did not hurry him. the air remained still, holding everything in place: grass, hills, sky, and the quiet figure resting among them. The weight of it was steady, calm, and grounding. This was not a place of movement or direction, it was a place of pause, and in that pause, the night continued, unchanging, unbothered, and deeply at rest. The hills surrounding the valley had grown darker as the night settled fully into its place. Their shapes were still visible, but only as gentle outlines against the deeper sky. They stood quietly, rising just enough to enclose the open land, as if offering a sense of shelter without ever closing it off. The hills did not move, they did not shift or respond, they simply remained, as they had for countless nights before. The man was aware of them without needing to look. Their presence was steady and reassuring, like something old and reliable. There was no sense of being watched, only of being held within a space that had already accepted him. The ground beneath him felt cooler now. The last warmth of day fully gone. The temperature changed slowly, carefully, without sudden contrast. The valley allowed the transition to happen at its own pace. A thin layer of mist began to form in the lower parts of the land. It moved softly, almost lazily, drifting close to the earth. It did not rise high or spread quickly. It simply settled, as if the valley had gently exhaled. The man remained still, allowing the night to continue around him. There was no reason to adjust his position. His body had already found a natural balance, supported evenly by the ground. Above, the stars seemed more distant than before. Their light was calm and faint, filtered through the quiet air. They did not sparkle or flash. They held their places with patience, unchanged by time or attention. The hills stood beneath them, steady and unmoving. Occasionally, a sound emerged, so soft it was nearly imagined. The slight brush of mist against grass. The faint settling of soil. Each sound was brief and gentle, never lingering long enough to disturb the stillness. Silence followed naturally, filling every space left behind. The man felt no urge to name what he was experiencing. There was no need for words. The valley did not ask for understanding. It offered presence, and nothing more. His breathing continued, slow and even. Each breath matched the quiet rhythm of the land. The night did not resist or influence it. It simply allowed it to unfold. The hills seemed to stand watch, not in protection, not in observation, but in existence. They had no role to play, no function to fulfill. Their stillness was complete on its own. Time drifted without structure. There was no clear division between moments. The night did not separate itself into parts. It flowed gently, like water moving too slowly to notice. The mist thickened slightly, though only near the ground. It softened the lower edges of the hills, blurring the line between land and air. Everything appeared smoother, quieter, more distant. The man rested his gaze ahead, unfocused. The darkness offered no details. And none were needed. The valley did not reveal itself. It did not hide. It simply remained as it was. A soft wind passed through briefly, higher up along the slopes. It did not reach him. It moved above, then faded, leaving the air unchanged below. The hills remained. They had seen countless nights begin and end. Countless figures passed through. And they had never needed to remember any of it. The man felt small, but not insignificant. His presence did not alter the valley, and the valley did not diminish him. Both existed together, quietly and without conflict. As the night deepened further, the darkness grew smoother, thicker, more complete. The stars remained steady, the mist settled. The hills held their shapes, nothing shifted, nothing changed, and beneath the watching hills, the man remained, still, unhurried, and gently held by the quiet weight of the valley. The wind returned briefly, softer than before, as though it were only checking in. It moved lightly across the tops of the hills, brushing past them without sound, then slowly descended into the valley. By the time it reached the open ground, it had almost completely disappeared. What remained was stillness, the kind of stillness that feels settled, not temporary. As if the air itself had decided to stop moving and simply be present. Grass no longer shifted. Mist no longer drifted. Everything rested exactly where it was. The man noticed the change without reacting to it. His body remained relaxed, supported by the earth beneath him. The absence of wind did not feel empty. It felt complete. Like the final note of a long, gentle melody fading into silence, the valley seemed to pause. Sounds, if they existed at all, were too small to separate from the quiet. The night held them close, smoothing their edges until they blended into the background of nothing happening. Above, the sky felt deeper. Darkness layered itself softly, one quiet shade over another. The stars remained, but their light seemed dimmer now, more distant, as if they had stepped slightly farther away to give the valley room to rest. The man's breathing slowed further, though he did not guide it. Each breath came naturally, arriving and leaving without effort. There was no need to pay attention to it. The rhythm had already found itself. The ground beneath him felt solid and dependable. Cool, but not cold. Firm, but not hard. It offered support without asking for acknowledgement. The earth did not respond to weight or movement. It simply carried everything evenly. The mist rested close to the surface of the valley now, no longer moving. It lay like a thin veil, softening the world without hiding it. Shapes became less defined. Edges blurred gently, as if clarity itself had chosen to rest. Time seemed to loosen further. Moments stretched quietly, expanding until they no longer felt measurable. The night did not pass from one state to another. It simply remained in the same deep, calm condition. The hills continued to stand, unchanged. Their silhouettes were steady and familiar, even in the dark. They did not draw attention. They did not recede. They simply were. The man remained beneath them, his presence calm and undemanding. He did not feel separate from the valley. He did not feel absorbed by it either. There was no need to define the relationship. Everything existed side by side. A distant sound appeared briefly, so faint it could have been imagined. It did not echo. It did not repeat. It faded quickly, leaving no space behind it. Silence returned, smooth and uninterrupted. The air felt balanced now. Neither warm nor cool. Neither moving nor still in any noticeable way. It surrounded everything evenly, holding the valley in a quiet equilibrium. The wind did not return. The night seemed satisfied with its stillness. There was no sense of anticipation. No sense of something approaching. The darkness had reached its resting state, and it intended to remain there. The man allowed his awareness to soften. Thoughts, if they appeared at all, drifted slowly and then dissolved. There was nothing for them to attach to. The valley offered no stimulation, no direction, no demand, only rest, and when the wind finally rested, everything else followed: grass, mist, hills, sky, and the quiet figure within the open land, settling together into a deep, shared calm that asked for nothing and gave nothing except peace. The night had moved into its deepest portion, the long middle where time felt widest and least defined. Darkness was no longer arriving or settling. It had already arrived and stayed, calm and complete. The valley rested within it. There was no clear boundary between sky and land now. The darkness above blended smoothly into the darkness below, creating a single, continuous space. The stars were fewer, or perhaps simply harder to notice. Their light was faint and distant, like a memory slowly drifting away. The man remained where he was, his posture unchanged. He felt no discomfort, no urge to move. The ground supported him evenly, distributing his weight without resistance. The earth did not grow colder or harder. It stayed steady, reliable, and calm. Breathing continued, slow and effortless. Each breath seemed to stretch slightly longer than the last, not by intention, but by the quiet influence of the night itself. Inhale and exhale blended together, forming a smooth, unbroken rhythm. The valley seemed to exist outside of sequence. There was no before or after here. No beginning or ending. Only a quiet present that extended in all directions, unmarked and unmeasured. The mist lay low and still, settled into every small dip in the land. It did not rise or fall. It did not drift or thin. It simply remained, softening the valley into a gentle, indistinct shape. The hills were barely visible now. Their outlines had faded into the surrounding darkness. They no longer stood apart from the night. They felt closer, though unchanged, as if distance itself had relaxed. Sound had almost entirely disappeared. Even the smallest noises had either faded or blended fully into the quiet. If something moved, it did so without sound. If something shifted, it left no trace. Silence was complete. The man's awareness softened further. He was still present, still awake, but the edges of attention had grown smooth. There was no effort involved in noticing or not noticing. The night did not require focus. The air felt thick in a comforting way, like a deep stillness that held everything gently in place. It did not press down or restrict movement. It simply removed the need for motion. Time stretched quietly, moments passed without leaving marks. There was no sense of progression. The long middle of the night did not lead anywhere. It existed for its own sake. The valley did not change, no wind returned. No animals stirred. No distant sounds arrived. The darkness remained steady and uninterrupted, as if the world had paused within a single breath. The man felt no separation between himself and the space around him. He did not feel merged with it either. The distinction simply no longer mattered. Everything was allowed to be exactly as it was. The night continued, deep and even, holding the valley in its quiet center. Nothing approached. Nothing faded. Nothing shifted. This was the long middle of the night, a wide, calm space where nothing was expected, and nothing needed to happen, and within it, the valley rested, unchanged and undisturbed, while the man remained still, carried gently by the steady, unending quiet. Above the valley, the sky remained vast and unhurried. There was no sign of movement, no hint of change. The stars that were still visible held their places quietly, as if they had nowhere else to be and no reason to leave. The sky did not anticipate morning, it did not prepare for light, it simply existed in its current state, calm and complete. The man rested beneath it, his presence small against the openness above. He did not look up often now. There was no need to. The sky could be felt without being seen, like a wide, steady awareness stretching endlessly overhead. The air remained balanced and still. It carried no direction, no temperature shift, no message. It surrounded everything evenly. Connecting ground, hills, and sky into a single, quiet whole, the valley lay open and receptive. Mist continued to rest low along the ground, unchanged. It softened the land without obscuring it, creating a gentle sense of distance between objects and attention. The world felt quieter not because there was less sound, but because there was less to notice. The man's breathing remained slow and steady, each breath arrived without effort and left without delay. There was no pause to control it, no need to follow it. The rhythm had become self-sustaining, guided by the calm of the night. Time felt suspended, not stopped, but loosened, no longer pulling moments forward or pushing them away. The night held time gently, allowing it to stretch and soften until it no longer felt linear. The hills remained as they were, barely visible yet fully present. Their shapes blended into the darkness, no longer separate from it. They felt closer, not in distance, but in familiarity. Nothing in the valley asked for attention, nothing demanded interpretation. The sky above held no urgency. It did not rush toward dawn. It did not hint at change. The darkness was not temporary here. It felt settled, complete in itself. The man remained still, his body at ease. The ground continued to support him evenly, unchanging in its firmness and temperature. There was no discomfort, no distraction. Silence stretched wide and smooth. If any sounds existed, they were too soft to form. They dissolved before reaching awareness, absorbed fully by the still air. The valley seemed to exist outside of time, held gently beneath a sky that did not move forward or backward. There was no sense of anticipation, no subtle signal of what might come next. Everything rested. The man's awareness softened further, drifting without direction. Thoughts, if they arose, did not stay long enough to shape themselves. They passed through gently and disappeared into the quiet. The night remained unchanged, the sky did not hurry, the land did not respond, the air did not shift, and beneath that sky without urgency. The valley continued to hold its calm, allowing the man to rest within a space where nothing pressed forward and nothing needed to end. The quiet between breaths became more noticeable than the breaths themselves. It lingered gently, stretching just a little longer each time, as though the night were creating space rather than filling it. The valley remained unchanged, breathing continued naturally, without intention or effort. Inhale arrived softly. Exhale followed, slow and even. And between them, there was a calm pause, a quiet moment where nothing moved and nothing needed to. The man rested fully within that rhythm. The air felt smooth and still, offering no resistance. It did not press against the skin or draw attention to itself. It simply surrounded everything evenly, creating a sense of gentle containment. The ground beneath him remained firm and cool, steady in its support. It did not shift or settle. It carried his weight without acknowledgement, unchanged by presence or time. The mist stayed close to the earth, unmoving. It blurred the valley into soft layers of shadow and form, smoothing details until the land felt distant and dreamlike. There were no sharp lines left to focus on. The hills were now little more than deep, familiar shapes in the darkness. Their presence was felt more than seen. They continued to stand quietly, unchanged and patient. Silence filled the valley completely, not as an absence, but as a presence of its own. A wide, gentle stillness that held everything together. Sound did not interrupt it. Movement did not disturb it. The man's awareness drifted slowly, like something floating on calm water. There was no effort involved in staying awake or letting go. Both felt equally possible. The quiet between breaths grew softer, deeper, more spacious. Time seemed to dissolve further. Moments did not follow one another in sequence. They overlapped gently, blending into a single, continuous state of rest. The night remained deep and stable. The sky above did not change. Darkness held its place, smooth and uninterrupted. Stars, if visible at all, were faint and distant. Their light softened until it barely registered. The valley continued to offer nothing to respond to. No wind returned, no sounds emerged, no changes arrived. The man remained still, his body relaxed and supported. His presence required no adjustment from the land. The valley accepted it without response. The quiet between breaths expanded until it felt as though the breaths themselves were simply passing through it, rather than interrupting it. Everything rested within that quiet. The night did not move forward, it did not recede, it simply remained, calm, steady, and open, holding the valley and the man within a shared stillness that asked for nothing and promised nothing beyond rest. Darkness reached a point where it no longer deepened. It settled into a full, even presence, smooth and uninterrupted. There were no lighter patches, no subtle variations to notice. The night felt finished, whole in itself. The valley rested quietly within it. There was no contrast left between objects and space. Hills, mist, ground, and sky blended gently into a single, continuous form. Everything felt connected by the same calm absence of movement. The man remained where he was, unchanged. His body felt light and supported at the same time, as if the earth carried him effortlessly. There was no tension left to release. Nothing remained to soften. Breathing continued, steady and slow. Each breath felt less like an action and more like a natural continuation of the stillness. Inhale and exhale moved through him without drawing attention, blending seamlessly into the quiet around him. The air felt perfectly balanced, not warm, not cool, not moving, not heavy. It surrounded everything evenly, offering no signals and no resistance. The night seemed content with its own stillness, holding the valley in a calm equilibrium. Time no longer felt relevant. There was no sense of duration, no awareness of passing moments. The night did not progress. It simply existed in a deep, stable state that felt endless without feeling long. The hills were no longer distinguishable as separate shapes. Their presence was felt rather than seen, like something familiar resting just beyond awareness. The mist rested close to the ground, completely still. It did not shift or thin. It lay quietly, softening the valley until it felt distant and peaceful. Sound had fully disappeared, not even the suggestion of movement remained. The silence was smooth and complete, uninterrupted by even the smallest disturbance, the man's awareness became soft and wide. Thoughts, if they arose at all, dissolved before forming words or images. There was nothing for them to hold on to. The valley offered no direction, no anticipation, no change. Darkness did not hide anything now. It simply held everything gently. Allowing the land to rest without definition, the man felt fully at ease, his presence effortless. There was no sense of separation between himself and the space around him, but no need to merge either. The distinction no longer mattered, everything was allowed to remain exactly as it was. Darkness felt complete, and within that completeness, the valley continued to rest, silent, still, and undisturbed, while the night held everything in a calm that needed no beginning and no end. At first, nothing appeared to change. The darkness remained smooth and even, resting quietly over the valley. But beneath that still surface, something subtle began to shift, not as an event, not as a signal, but as a gentle easing. The night loosened its hold. There was no line between dark and light, no clear beginning of morning. Instead, the darkness became softer, less dense, as though it were slowly exhaling. The valley remained silent, unchanged in shape and form, yet faintly more open. The man remained still, his breathing continued in the same slow rhythm, unbroken and effortless. Nothing in his posture suggested awareness of the shift, yet the air around him felt slightly different, lighter. Calmer in a new way, the sky above held its darkness, but it no longer felt endless. Somewhere beyond sight, far beyond the hills, the idea of light existed. Not as brightness, but as possibility. The valley did not respond. Mist remained low along the ground, resting where it had settled hours before. The hills stayed quiet and unmoving, their shapes still softened by shadow. The earth beneath the man remained cool and steady, unchanged in its support. Silence continued, complete and unbroken. The first hint of returning light did not bring sound with it. No bird stirred. No wind arrived. The valley did not announce the shift. It allowed it to happen without acknowledgement. The darkness thinned almost imperceptibly, not enough to see, but enough to feel. The sky felt wider now, as if space itself had gently expanded. The stars, already faint, seemed to recede further, their presence becoming less distinct without fully disappearing. Time remained loose and undefined. The night did not hurry toward its ending. It released itself slowly, carefully, as though respecting the stillness it had created. The man's awareness remained soft. If he noticed anything at all, it was only a sense of ease, nothing new, nothing demanding. The valley continued to hold him gently, unchanged by the approaching day. The hills remained patient. They had witnessed countless transitions like this. Each one quiet, each one unremarkable. Light always returned, and darkness always faded, without needing to be observed. The air felt subtly clearer now, as if it had been rinsed by the night. It carried no scent, no movement, only a sense of openness. The valley rested in this in-between state, not fully night, not yet morning. Darkness still remained, deep and calm, but it no longer felt complete. It had begun to make space, and in that space, the man remained still, supported by the land, as the night gently prepared to give way, without urgency, without sound, to whatever came next. The light did not arrive suddenly, it did not break the night or replace it. Instead, it continued the same gentle process that had already begun. softening, easing, and opening the darkness until it no longer felt like something separate. The valley remained quiet, shadows were still present, but they had grown thinner, less defined. The mist near the ground began to feel lighter, though it did not move. It simply rested, as calm as before, allowing the new balance to settle naturally. The man remained still for a while longer. There was no signal telling him it was time to leave. No inner urgency. No clear moment of transition. Eventually, movement arose on its own, unforced and unplanned. Like a slow continuation rather than a decision, he shifted gently, careful not to disturb the ground beneath him. His movements were slow and quiet, as if the valley were still asleep and he wished to keep it that way. The earth did not respond. It accepted the change without reaction. As he stood, the air felt slightly cooler, clearer. Not fresh in a sharp way, but calm and open, like a long-held breath finally released. The sky above had lightened just enough to suggest direction without offering detail. The hills became faintly more visible. Their outlines returned softly, familiar and unchanged. They did not appear closer or farther away. They simply remained where they had always been. The man gathered his bag carefully, lifting it without sound. Nothing shifted around him. The grass did not rustle. The mist did not react. The valley held its stillness, uninterrupted. He paused once more, not to look back, not to remember, but simply to exist in the space for one last quiet moment. The valley did not respond. It did not mark his presence or his pause. It remained steady and indifferent in the most peaceful way. When he began to walk, his steps were slow and light. Each one touched the ground briefly, then lifted away, leaving no trace behind. The valley did not record his passing. It did not change. The light continued to grow gradually, but without brightness. Morning did not announce itself. It arrived in the same way the night had arrived, patient, quiet, and without demand. The man moved toward the edge of the valley, following no path in particular. The land opened easily before him, unchanged by his direction. He did not hurry. There was no reason to. Behind him, the valley remained exactly as it was. Mist rested low, hills stood quietly, air remained still, nothing closed, nothing ended. He left without disturbing the valley, and the valley did not notice his leaving. It held its silence gently, just as it had through the night, complete, calm, and unconcerned with beginnings or endings, as the light continued to return. The valley remained what it had always been, a place where nothing needed to happen, and nothing ever truly did.